Before we get into the video, I need you guys to do me a favour. Number 1, like the video. Also comment. Let me know your thoughts on the story. Brian Rattigan, also dubbed as Kingrat, is one of Ireland's most unwavering gangland figures. Known for his cruel and unusually brutal 2001 M of Declan Gavin. Now Brian was a monster through and through. He held no allegiance or loyalty, yet demanded loyalty from others, such as his ex-girlfriend, who was known to have a hand in Rattigan's drug operation before moving on with another crime figure, that being poor Geraghty. Now the M of 21-year-old gangster Declan Gavin is said to have what sparked the crumlin Drimnagh feud, which was both brutal and unfortunate, as most of the gangsters grew up together and actually went to the same school and made money together also. This feud was directly responsible for at least 16 M's. Now Brian spent 18 years in jail for an M before being released in 2021, and his incarceration did not rehabilitate a madman that was known to command a small army of gangsters, enforcers and hitmen. Brian sat in his small cell stewing. He agonised over the fact that the love of his life, Natasha McEnroe, ex-girlfriend and the mother of his daughter, had reneged on her promise to wait 18 years for him to always stand by his side. Now, in 2013, Natasha was said to have given birth to a son with her new partner, that being poor Geraghty. Now, according to associates, Brian Rattigan felt betrayed. Now, one of the main reasons Brian had built up a criminal empire was to ensure Natasha was given the world. So what he did while he was in jail, he had ordered a hit on poor Geraghty. Now that hit failed. So again, stewing in a jail cell with other notorious Dublin gangsters, crime bosses and hitmen, Brian plotted aggressively. He wanted to establish himself as not only the king of Crumlin, but Ireland as a whole upon his release. Now, Brian Rattigan was born and raised in Drimnagh, Cooley Road. Traditionally speaking, Drimnagh was known for its gang culture and high poverty rates. Working class dads dabbled in petty crime or established themselves as bank robbers and safe crackers. Now, Brian Rattigan did not excel in school, neither did his pals, so they all quickly spent more time on the Crumlin estate, roaming between Crumlin and Drimnagh, robbing cars and taking scrap metal. Now, police knew Brian Rattigan as a relatively small gangster at the time, who also sold gear along with the likes of Declan Gavin and other gangsters. They were part of the same gang. Their bread and butter was coke and X tablets. Now, Brian Rattigan had grew up with Declan Gavin from childhood. They all sold gear together, stole cars and acted as enforcers across the south side of Dublin. Now, the drug trade was booming from the crumbling Drimnagh gang. However, from 1999 to 2000, the gang was responsible for over €1 million of drug shipments coming into Dublin. Now, the shipment also included GUNs. Some says they have been supplied by notorious and dangerous crime boss Martin Marlowe Highland. On March 9th of 2000, Declan Gavin and 2 other gangsters, had booked a room at the Holiday Inn on Perth Street. There, the gang had snapbags, cling film, scales, and other material. 2 kg of high-purity coke was on the table, and 49,000 X tablets. The Gardai, acting on intelligence, had stormed the hotel and found the room. Declan and 2 other teenagers were handcuffed and arrested, and then taken into custody. Now, it was said that the gang was caught in 720p, breaking down gear, ready for distribution. Declan Gavin was a senior member of the gang and was 20 years old at the time. To the shock of gangsters like Brian Rattigan, Declan was released 2 days later and no charges were brought against him. People wondered how this could happen. Now, 2 other gangsters were charged with possession with intent to supply, one of them being Graham the Wig Whelan. Now, despite there being no evidence and Declan not being in the room at the time the police raided, paranoia set in, and Declan was called a grass and also a rat by some gang members. The rumours intensified, and Brian felt betrayed, heartbroken even. After all, this was his childhood friend. Now the divide was immediate. Brian Rattigan took charge of one faction of the gang, while Freddie Thompson took charge of the other side. Each gang was put on notice. They were no longer friends, in fact they were rivals. Again, this feud was directly responsible for at least 16 M's. Now fast forward to the 25th of August 2001, and now 21-year-old Declan Gavin was stabbed multiple times outside Abrakebabra restaurant on Crumlin Road in the early hours of the morning by a masked man. Now, it was said that Declan was chased down prior to the M. Now, after the fatal incident, where Declan was just left on the ground after being stabbed multiple times, the masked man had entered the waiting car and then drove away. Then, 18-year-old Joseph Rattigan, who was also known as Joey and was Brian Rattigan's younger brother, he was tragically close to his family home on Cooley Road on the 16th of July 2002, 50 yards away in fact. Now, Joey had been ambushed after dropping his girlfriend home. A masked man had targeted Joey, aimed a pistol and then pressed the trigger. Ammo had struck Joey's forehead. Now, Brian was said to have been absolutely distraught. Brian had a tattoo of his younger brother on his chest and also a locket with his face engraved. Brian is also said to have taken a space out of the newspaper every year for the anniversary of Joey Rattigan. The brothers had spent most of the time side by side. Now, Brian was going to make sure that he was going to avenge his brother no matter what or the cost. Now, in 2002, Brian Rattigan found himself nearly emmed when a triggerman had stormed Brian's home on Cooley Road again, began to open fire. Brian was struck in the stomach but managed to escape by jumping out the bedroom window. And then, in 2004, Kingrat had been arrested after he had aimed a pistol at Gardai patrol cars and then pressed the trigger, which had been following the enforcer. For the incident and the drug offences, Brian was jailed for 13 years. Now, Brian has served most of his adult life in Portalease jail. While inside, he smuggled a mobile phone into the jail and then began to establish a profitable drug empire. Brian was selling gear in jail to the tune of €1 million. Also, while inside, it was said that Brian had ordered the M of 24-year-old Paul Warren, who was allegedly the person responsible for the Joey Rattigan M. In February of 2004, Paul Warren was in a public house in Newmarket Square, where he was nursing a drink and laughing and joking. Two masked men had calmly walked into the pub. One masked man quickly directed drinkers out and then stood at the front door. The other triggerman had followed Paul Warren into the bathroom. Now, Paul Warren was struck with ammo twice, one to the forehead, just like Joey. In 2009, while serving a 13-year jail sentence, Brian was found guilty of the M of his childhood friend, Declan Gavin. Now, Brian appealed the life sentence and accepted manslaughter. He also wrote to Pauline, which was Gavin's mum, and apologised and asked for forgiveness for all the pain he may have caused. Now, with the boss Brian Rattigan unlikely to step foot on Dublin soil again as a free man, many people believed that the feud would slow down. However, that was not the case, because in a span of 48 hours, 2 M's took place. 27-year-old Gerald Eglinton was fatally in front of their 11-year-old stepdaughter on South Circular Road. It proved fatal. The next day, Declan O'Reilly had been fatally in front of their young son. Now, the Gardai believed that both incidences were due to the order of Freddie Thompson. Now, Freddie Thompson himself would ultimately be jailed for life when he took part in the Kinahan feud. Now, Brian Rattigan was able to continue his stronghold on Crumlin and Dublin as a whole because he had become the biggest dealer in the Dublin prison system. In February of 2013, the Gardai raided multiple homes in Walkinstown and found 5 kg of H plus a mobile phone that housed messages from Brian Rattigan that directed his gang on how to cut up and store the gear and where he needed it to be placed. And on a separate occasion, the Gardai raided the home and found €15 in cash at one of the properties that were linked to Brian Rattigan. No one was at the home at the time of the incident, but the police did confiscate the cash. Now, Brian Rattigan was released in 2021, and as a free man, the Gardai are concerned that he is about to resume his stronghold on Dublin. After all, he has made contact with known gangsters and crime families, and the Gardai believe that this guy will continue to be ruthless in his approach. After all, Brian Rattigan is a dangerous man. Stay safe.